How to prevent another escape from the Orange County Jail. How to keep a controversial jail informant program from running afoul of the law. Part 2 of my interview with Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchens, next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Memorial Care is transforming the way healthcare is delivered, keeping our communities and businesses healthy by guiding them on the path to wellness with easily accessible hospitals, physician offices, and outpatient centers. Memorial Care, leading the way.
Hi, I'm Rick Reiff. Welcome to Inside OC. In my recent interview with Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchens, we talked about the rising crime rate and homeland security. In this part 2 of the interview, we talk about the jail informant controversy and the recent jailbreak. Here's Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchens. So, Sheriff, earlier this year, a jailbreak, I think I described it as embarrassing, national headlines. These guys had managed to get out of the Santa Ana jail. What was your, now that little time has passed, how would you assess that episode?
Right, well, that's the call that you don't want to get as the sheriff. I got the call that we had 3 escapees, murderers.
Bad guys.
Really bad guys. Murder, mayhem, attempted murder, gang members. So we immediately responded to that and started an intense investigation to get these guys back. My biggest concern was that they were going to do harm to somebody out there because they had nothing to lose at this point, and we wanted to get that information out to the public, and with the help of the media.
Right. And they were gone. They were on the lam for about a week.
Yes.
And they didn't do any harm, but boy, it sounds like they came real close.
They came real close, and I did breathe a sigh of relief once we got the last 2 into custody. As you know, the one turned himself in at a business in Santa Ana, and we ultimately located the other 2 through help of a homeless individual up there. The Board of Supervisors had offered a reward, and we got the other 2 back in custody.
And this had been the first break in many, many years from the jail.
Right. We, escapes happen. I hate to say it, but there's no prison I know that is immune from that, except probably Supermax is probably our most secure, prison in the United States. We have I'm not making excuses for this, because I stood up and said we're embarrassed by this. The entire department was embarrassed by what had happened and wanted to make this right. And so we are taking a look at, we're doing the criminal investigation on the escape itself is still going on. The internal investigation to look at, what we did, what our folks did from top to bottom, top rank to bottom. And we're looking at our facility hardening. We are working in a jail there that was built in the 60s, built for that population I talked about earlier, about 30% felons and 70% misdemeanors, with an exercise yard on the roof.
Right. And now, as you had said earlier, it's 70% felons and 30% misdemeanors.
Correct.
Yeah.
So these 3 individuals were model prisoners, and that's probably, something we should be paying attention to in the future. They didn't want to bring attention to themselves, and they didn't. And that's why they were able to be housed in this dormitory area where they were at. So we're looking at all of those. We're already done some facility hardening activities, but we're going to have a full report for the board, and we're using some technology and other things to work with that facility. It's expensive to build a new jail, but at some point we're going to have to replace that facility.
Has anyone been disciplined? Anybody on your staff been disciplined for what happened, or do you expect there will be action?
I expect that there will be. The investigation is still ongoing, so no, nobody has been disciplined, because we're looking at the entire incident. We want to look at it, holistically, to see, what happened, who did what, or, did anybody fail to follow procedure? Were the procedures wrong? That
Yeah.
you want to look at everything. And then if discipline is merited, we'll certainly do that.
It just seems like the thing that jumps out as a member of the public reading this 16 hours. There was like this 16 hours from the time they escaped to the time it was discovered. That just I have a problem. I don't care how porous the facility is or how underfunded it might be.
Right.
16 hours. Can't somebody take a look and see what's going on? I mean,
Right.
should there be like mouths hitting the table over that?
Mine did, yeah. And that's what I came out and told the press. I mean, that should never have happened, because we do so many counts. And so it's a question of looking at how is the count done? Number one, were the counts done? How was it done? Obviously, something went wrong for us not
I have a feeling
not
you
to
know pretty much at this point. You have a pretty good feel
I know
for this.
I know some of it, but I want to see it in the larger context before we start
really
taking action.
I mean, what do you have to know at this point about that? I'm
Well,
I know there's still an investigation.
Right.
I mean,
So we need to know, were these individuals working in the jails? Where are the policies? And were they following the policies? Were these policies being enforced by supervision? And those are all important questions. And then we know that these individuals had outside help. And how did that, enter into this? And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that it wasn't discovered for all those hours put us behind. We've had other escape investigations where we're able to find the individuals rather quickly, but this put us behind quite a bit. And so our investigators, who did a marvelous job, they were playing catch up every day. As I would go down and see how the investigation was going, every day we're just getting a little bit closer, we're right behind these guys. And I can't emphasize how much that the public and the media helped by getting the pictures of that van. They had stolen a van, having the picture of that van and the decals and the details about that van out there that helped us and helped put pressure, quite frankly, on these individuals. They had a good plan inside to get out. We thought they had an equally good plan because we were behind them for so long onto getting away. But their plan to get away on the outside was not as good.
Well, their plan to get away almost made me think after that, well, maybe they weren't as smart as they seemed because they didn't have like, okay, here we are. What do we do now that we're on the outside?
Yeah,
but
it kind of fell apart.
I kind of remember, you had referenced the Chamberlain murder prior to you becoming sheriff. And as I recall, I think that's the case where they found out there were guards who were like watching ball games or whatever, and they were, on their Blackberries or whatever while this stuff was going on. They weren't monitoring it. Are we likely to hear something when all is said and done on this, that there was something like that, somebody who was asleep at the switch, not doing what they should have done?
We might find that there's someone or someones who were not doing what they were supposed to do, but they won't be looking at their iPhones or televisions because they're not allowed inside.
That was one of the things you took care of.
Right, okay. Right, exactly.
Right. Okay. Another problem that you have had was this thing that's been called the Snitch Tank, or the informant controversy, which has now jeopardized and actually vacated some verdicts because improper procedures were used by jailhouse informants to in order to get evidence on people who were, facing trial and accused of things. And of course it happened in your jail. Again, what's your assessment of this whole thing?
I think that there were some problems, but it's been blown completely out of proportion by defense bar, in my opinion.
Rather successfully, it seems.
Rather successfully, and that's their job. That's their job to, create doubt and to challenge, evidence, and I get that, and that's our system. But I think at the end of the day, of course, the California Attorney General is still looking at the actions of some of my deputy sheriffs who worked in the jail, and we'll see the result of that. But again, much has been made of verdicts that have been overturned or people who haven't been charged, and that just happens all the time. It's a prosecutorial decision. Sometimes these cases are on, they don't have the best witness. You've got another inmate who's a witness, or you've got a gang member who's, there's a number of things that happen that impact these. So we have made some changes in terms of how we deal with an actual informant in the jail. Again, I make a distinction. We have informants every day, but they're not jailhouse informants on a case. They're like, deputy, there's going to be a fight in here tonight.
Right.
That's just someone giving information.
That happens all the time, that people are coming in, and those are informants, but that's not the kind of informant we're talking about. We're talking about the informant who is put in, we want you to be next to this guy, befriend him, find out what you can.
Yeah, and we don't do that. If we have someone who comes forward to one of our deputies and says, hey, I just sit next to this guy, he just confessed to this murder, we would contact the investigator on that case, and then the district attorney office becomes involved in that, and the determination is made. So we don't decide on our own. What I have done is, if an outside agency wants anything done with that type of informant, that chief has to write me a letter and request that. So I'm going to know about any kind of informant operation going on in my jail, and we're going to make sure that we follow all of the law with regard to that.
There's two realities here, or let's say two narratives. There's yours, which I find very persuasive, and there is theirs, which is that actually this is much more premeditated, information's withheld from the defense lawyers, and that's what the controversy is all about.
Right, and like anything, I'm sure that there's some truth in there, but again, if you look at some of the voluminous documents that have been submitted, and in fact, one of the judges commented on it, was laughable in some cases. So. But there's always a grain of truth in there somewhere. So
of course, as you know, the one judge who hasn't found it laughable is Judge Thomas Goethals.
Right.
And I remember you in another forum discussing this very topic, saying that you felt the judge had gone too far. And I think this was in the context of sanctions that he had put on a couple of your deputies. Or what did you mean when you said this judge has gone too far?
In his comments. His comments, and I don't remember the exact wording, in this hearing were essentially saying that these deputies are lying or being deceitful.
Yeah, on the witness stand.
Right. And so these deputies, this was a hearing to determine, what was going to be released, to the defense. And these deputies are not attorneys. They don't make those decisions. In fact, I offered to have, and county counsel offered to be there because they deal with discovery matters. This was a discovery hearing. And so I think had county counsel been allowed to be there, because they represent us in discovery, they could have easily explained what the deputies were unable to explain.
As I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, what got the deputies in the trouble with the judge, they're on the stand and they're being asked, is there some system for, I don't know if it's for tracking informants or something, is there some system? And I think they said no, there wasn't. And in fact, there was.
Well, but it's not.
And so is that lying, or what is that?
But see, it was being portrayed as this is an informant tracking system. We don't have an informant tracking system. What we have is an inmate database.
All right.
We track everybody. We track who they are. Have they been in our custody before?
Right.
Were there problems? We do that so that we can properly classify
I guess a judge felt, though, that, okay, so maybe the defense asked the question in the wrong way, but you're being evasive if you're not giving a full answer. If you're not saying, well, wait, we don't have that, but here's what we have, and that's what they didn't do.
And it's just like when defense asked for discovery from the sheriff's department, and that goes to county counsel. And county counsel, I've talked to the attorneys, they'll get it sometimes, and they'll be asking for something, but it's not clear. County counsel will call it up. Now you're asked for this. Is this what you want? I think this is what you want. So we work with them all the time. We try and get them what they want. So I think sometimes it's just the terminology, and this system. It began in the media, being not in the media, but by Scott Sanders and others, that this is an informant tracking database, a secret And it's not. I mean, we've been giving information, for many, many years to anybody who has a discovery request from that system. So it's no secret.
As you know, this has had profound implications for the DA's office. There have been cases that have been thrown back as a result of this. How do you feel about the media coverage overall? Has the media been fair about this? Too sensational? What would you say about the media coverage?
I think it's a bit sensational, but I mean, that's, Snitch Tank sounds, pretty exciting. And it's kind of a glimpse into the world of working with informants, which, on a lot of our cases, we have to work with informants in gangs and narcotics. It's very important. We get information in areas we would not otherwise get that information. So I think that, like I said, it was blown out of proportion in the media. It was a sexy story, dealing with informants and that kind of thing. But it's also a story that's hard to really explain because there's a lot of legalities in there.
Right.
There's a lot of things in the criminal justice system that impact discovery and this and that. So it's difficult to really get at the heart of it, at the real story. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Tough issue, and we'll
it's a
continue.
It's a complicated
Let me
issue.
ask you: do you expect anything soon from the Attorney General? And have they talked to you? Do you know? Have they been in the jail talking to people?
They have been talking to a lot of people. They've been talking to county council. They've been talking to the deputies.
Have they talked to you?
They have not talked to me. They've talked to members of my command staff, and I would anticipate something in the near future. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully not before this show airs, but we'll see.
We'll see.
That can happen. Anyway,
it can happen.
Something else I'd like to ask you about, it's national news. I don't know how much it impacts your department, but maybe it doesn't. That's all the protests nowadays against the police. And whenever there's a shooting or something, it really cops under fire, if you will. They come up with another, sexy headline. But I mean, it's really, has that had an impact on morale among law enforcement officers?
I would say yes. I mean, it's a tough time with, cameras out there everywhere you look and, people trying to catch police officers doing something wrong. What you typically see is a partial image release, but then when you look at in context at the whole image, it's sometimes a different story. That's not to say that across the nation we don't have police officers who do wrong things, but I was talking to someone recently and they said, we have the impression that you don't discipline officers. And I said, oh, quite the contrary. In law enforcement, you're held to a much higher standard than you would be in a business. I mean, we discipline police officers and deputy sheriffs all the time for misconduct, or we fire them and get them out of the agency if they're not following the policies and procedures, they're not doing things correctly. But when you talk about officer-involved shootings and those things that create all of this concern out there, we really, I've never met a cop that said, hey, today I want to go out and get involved in a shooting with somebody. It just doesn't happen. We react to behavior. We don't react to race. We don't react to the sex. We don't react to anything but the behavior. Yeah. So in most of these incidents, you'll see there has been some behavior on the part of someone that catches our attention. And then if the officer does feel a threat to themselves or others, they're going to make a decision.
But isn't the public perception much different than that now? The public, there's a big, huge chunk of the public that believes police, either in general or a good minority of police are racist.
Right. And so I think we haven't done enough of explaining what we do, the training that we provide. I don't believe that the police officers are racist. I think that we all have our biases, and sometimes we have unconscious biases, as they say. Everyone has, female sheriff. People may have a bias on me because I'm a female sheriff. So I think we have to be conscious of those. In these areas, these low-income areas like you've seen in Baltimore and some of the areas where we've had some of these incidents occur, you have bigger problem, and Ferguson, you have bigger problems than law enforcement. You have governments that are not taking care of people. You have people who are not getting services. And so that anger sometimes comes out on law enforcement because we're the face of the government, right? We put that uniform on, we're the face of the government, and we're there when violence occurs, we're there when something happens. And so sometimes, and I think Ferguson is a good example of that. When the Department of Justice took a look at Ferguson, they saw the problem was much bigger. You know, the government there had decided they were going to make money off the residents by ticketing for every little thing, people who couldn't afford to pay those fines.
Another ordeal that you went through was cancer.
Right.
Right. And everything's looking good so far, right?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
So I was diagnosed in October 2011 with stage 3 breast cancer and had all my lymph nodes on the left side taken out, and they were in quite a few of my lymph nodes. So it got my attention. No cancer in my family. I was the first one. So, you know, I never thought, you know, why me? I just thought, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to stay alive? Had great doctors, was treated at Kaiser. They were wonderful. I'm doing fine today, but I'm talking tonight to a group called Chemo Buddies who provide support and assistance to particularly women who are by themselves going through this or with young children. So it kind of has opened me up to another world, the world of cancer survivors, amazing people. And I have a deeper appreciation for life and what's really important now. And so it's been kind of a gift.
And you're almost, are you at that point now where pretty soon, I mean, I guess you never get a totally clean bill of health, but where they say things are...
You know, it's, I'll tell you, for cancer survivors, it's always in the back of your mind. You know, is it going to come back? But I think you're mentally prepared, like if it comes back, I'm going to go back in and fight it again. And so I get really excited about hearing about these new treatments. They're getting better and better all the time on how to treat cancer. So you just hope it stays at the door, you know, the wolf stays out. But, you know, you have to mentally prepare yourself that it could come back.
Did anybody advise, gee, Sheriff, you ought to, you know, you ought to just give up the day job? And
You know, no, but what was funny, it was because I was getting cancer treatment, people would say, well, welcome back. I said, well, I never left. I've been coming to work every day. I mean, I would go and get chemo.
You never missed
on
work?
A Thursday. I missed a couple days here and there. Every 3 weeks, I'd get chemo on a Thursday. I would miss Friday and be back to work on Monday. As you get more chemo treatments, you kind of get worn down. So maybe I wouldn't come back until Tuesday. But I never was off.
Wow. So given how you're feeling, what you've achieved, what there's still to do, your term ends when? 2018?
2018.
Are you going to run again?
You know, if my health holds and my family is still supportive of me doing this job, there's no reason why I shouldn't run again.
Well, last time I talked to your husband, Larry, he was very supportive, and he's a former police chief, right?
Yeah, he was assistant chief in LA Unified School District. So it was his idea that I apply for this job to begin with when the board had to select someone. So
he wanted you out of the house, right?
I think
you were
retired? Because he was retired. I think that was the reason. I'm beginning to suspect that.
And he wants you to keep running?
He's fine with me continuing to work, so I don't know what happened there.
Right, okay. All righty. One last thing quickly. One of the people who was important in your career is former LA Sheriff Lee Baca. And we all know about the jail scandal that they had in LA where Paul Tanaka, under his right-hand man, if you will, was just convicted. He took a guilty plea to lying to an investigation. Highly respected guy. I think you admired him. What do you make of all that?
You know, I left the department about 3 years sooner than I would have because of Mr. Tanaka and his influence in the department, his negative influence in the department. And I think Sheriff Baca had a blind spot when it came to that individual who was given a tremendous amount of power to wield in the organization. And so I saw the wrong people getting promoted and the right people not getting promoted. And I talked to Lee, as many did, about that. Lee Baca, when he came into office, did a lot of good things for the LA County Sheriff's Department. And is a genuinely nice, caring man. But like I say, I don't take away his responsibility, because as
Right.
sheriff, you're responsible. But it's the danger
yeah.
of trusting the wrong people.
It had to
And in
be
this
hard
case, he
to
did.
see that happen.
It was very hard to
Yeah.
see, yeah.
Well, thank you, Sheriff.
Thank
Terrific
you.
interview. Thanks so much. Thanks again to my guest, Sheriff Sandra Hutchens. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.